Ken Cuccinelli has worked in the immigration business in the government. He's a senior fellow for Homeland Security and Immigration at the Center for Renewing America and a former deputy secretary of Homeland Security under President Trump. Ken, great to have you back with us, sir.
Yeah, good to be with you as always.
What do you make of the dam breaking, first and foremost, among these Democrats who are now screeching about how their cities are being destroyed by illegal foreign nationals?
I just feel terrible for them all, and I wish we could move all of their city right to the border. They could all be Brownsville. And, I mean, New York City is getting a taste of what it's like for Brownsville and has been for years, and they're screaming that Eric Adams, I have no idea how to solve this. That's a near exact quote. Yeah, well, I got an idea for you. Close the border.
Yes.
But instead of squawking at Joe Biden, he screams at Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis for shipping illegals to New York City. And the fact of the matter is that exercise has demonstrated the massive hypocrisy of all these sanctuary city folks.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Isn't this an amazing and unfortunate case study in leftism? Because you get all this virtue signaling. We're the good people. We would never turn away mankind from our city. We're a sanctuary city. And then they encourage the destruction of other people's communities. And then when it finally arrives, at their doorstep, they're all of a sudden freaking out. Like, we didn't plan on this. I'm sorry. I thought you said you were welcoming to everybody.
Right. Well, we saw this most spectacularly when DeSantis sent those 2 busloads or plane loads up to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So 50 illegals. And Massachusetts, by the way, Republican governor at the time, called out 125 National Guardsmen to deal with 50 illegals that landed for fed Martha's Vineyard. Oh my goodness!
I know, and I was just saying a moment ago. I love that Martha's Vineyard considers itself a sanctuary community. That as if that's going to be some sort of frequent occurrence. That foreign nationals are going to be like swimming across to Martha's Vineyard on a routine basis.
Well, but then when it actually happens, they are unmasked as what they really are, and it's hypocritical. They're ibbies in your backyard. I don't say that. In your backyard. And,
yes.
And that's what's been going on. It took Texas 2 years to finally start repelling people at the border. That began in May of this year. And that combined with several states, we've talked about Texas and Florida, shipping illegals to these sanctuary cities has changed the debate. Now, I would point out to your listeners that Democrat voters have opposed Joe Biden's immigration policies within months of him assuming office. Within months. It was very quick. And he's still underwater with Democrat voters on immigration, which leads to the question, well, then why the heck is he doing all this? And it's because the truly radical erase our border left has control of this administration. And Texas, of course, is paying a dear price. New Mexico, Arizona, and California are as well. But with Democrat leadership, they squash their complaints, though Kristen Sinema hasn't done so lately because she's up for election. And you'll remember Senator Mark Kelly, when he was up for election, that was the only time he complained about it. You haven't heard a peep out of him since. Leftist. And so it will be interesting. I think the outcry on the Remain in Texas program is going to be so thorough and outrageous that they aren't going to be able to sustain this. And if they try to, they're going to get slaughtered in court by Texas.
Okay, so let's discuss this. The LA Times has a piece that they posted late yesterday saying that the Biden administration is considering, quote, Remain in Texas to hold these illegal immigrant families in the Lone Star State until their asylum claims are fully litigated. This doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. One of them is, aren't the asylum claims taking upwards of a decade at this point? So what, Texas is going to take the world in, and then they just have to park there?
Yeah, they're not moving those cases along at all, and of course they're trying to figure out every way they can to let people in. And as you and I know, and as was revealed rather starkly over the last 5 or 10 years, the asylum claim notion is a complete canard.
Yes.
It came into being because we were dealing with the communist bloc, the tragedy of not taking Jews before World War II in this country, and our American reaction to that. Now it's being abused by economic migrants who are intentionally clogging the system. They don't want a conclusion. They don't want a decision because they're not actually asylees. They're not running from anything other than they'd like to upgrade their opportunities. And I understand that, but we have a legal process for doing that. I was honored to swear many of those new citizens in who played by the rules, and nobody likes a cheater.
And is this even constitutional? I guess that's an important question, right? I mean, that the federal government
to you and me,
the federal government will force an undue burden on a single state of the union, and then the rest of the states don't have to endure that? Like, is that constitutional?
So first of all, your and my interstate travel is constitutionally protected. We saw this in race cases in the 60s. And it's established for all of us. The question is, do people who enter the country illegally do they have all the same rights? I personally don't believe they should, but the courts acknowledge an awful lot of them. So if that's the case, how do you stop them from traveling interstate?
Yes.
That's a good question.
But I want to know about
Texas will defeat it.
Yes, but I want to understand the constitutional rights of Texans here, because they're the ones who are being subjected to an undue burden of the world's masses being dropped into their state. And so how does that work? Is that allowed?
So Texas will claim that as the harm to Texans. They'll talk about all the different costs, and Texas has become very good at quantifying these things, and it'll prove the harm to Texas. There still has to be a law violated separate from the harm,
right?
But I don't think that's going to be hard to do when you're treating Texas and Texans separately from everybody else.
Yes, and back to the issue of asylum claims that are so disproportionately fraudulent. I mean, what percentage of claims need to be fraudulent before the government will admit that they're a part of a scam?
It's a good question. When we ran the Remain in Mexico program, not the Remain in Texas program, the Remain in Mexico program, the granting of asylum claims was, as I recall, somewhere around 1%. Now, mind you, the exact same career immigration officers decided those cases who were deciding ordinary asylum cases where the grant rates were around 25%. So that Remain in Mexico program exposed those flows of illegals as not asylees, and that demonstrated that it was being used for fraud, just as a way to stay in the United States. And the best way to fix that, don't let them stay in the United States.
Right. And if if you know that data, and you're allowing 99% of the cases to stay in the United States while they're considered, and you know that they're fraudulent based on all of the historical data, then that should be impeachable. That you are aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise. The numbers are overwhelming.
Well, Mayorkas has been aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise for a while. I mean, they're not running a border security operation. They're running an invasion facilitation operation.
Human trafficking, yes.
I believe Mayorkas is already subject to impeachment if the Congress chose to do so. And he's lied to Congress too, so you've got that too. But this is an extraordinary situation, and part of what amazes me is they keep coming up with new ways to make it worse.
Right. Yes, they do. These mayors who are all claiming that they're asking for help now, I think it's always useful to listen to the specifics of what they're asking for. And it turns out they all want money. The New York City mayor, Eric Adams, the Chicago mayor, Muriel Bowser, they all want cash money from federal taxpayers. I haven't heard any of them say that they need to end their sanctuary city policies or work with ICE or honor detainer requests or deport illegals who are here in the country causing mayhem.
Yeah.
What do you make? But the idea is these Democrats. Do you detect sincerity in their pleas at all?
In the plea, sure, they love money. And look, New York is struggling mightily. You've undoubtedly seen, and many of the people listening to us have seen, footage of town meetings in Chicago, in New York, where 95% Democrat precincts are screaming bloody murder over the sanctuary policies because of what it's doing to their neighborhood.
Right.
And these are not, gated communities. These are folks who already have enough concerns. And now the virtue signaling of their radical liberal whack jobs they've elected, and they have elected them, you do get what you vote for, is having outrageously bad consequences. Their schools are now being turned into immigrant hotels, and their school system itself is being overwhelmed now very suddenly and very severely.
Yes.
And in ways they can't handle. And citizens are responding, and citizens who, have been voting candidly, just judging by the precinct returns, for the radical left-wing Democrats that are doing this to them. I'd love to see AOC show up at one of these meetings in her own district and explain why everybody screaming at her is wrong. Good luck with that.
No, she's been fully ingested into the establishment of that party. She will only do things that look good for Biden, and speaking up on behalf of constituents who are suffering is not one of those things. The issues with politics here, I'd love for your insight on this too, because you're very familiar with this. I get the sense, even today, that Democrat strategists think that this is not going to be a big deal come Election Day next year. That their voters don't care that much, and it's not really going to affect the general election votes. What do you think?
Well, first of all, it'll be a little different depending where you are in the country. There is no way of getting around this issue in the Arizona Senate race, for example. And all of those border areas that the Democrats used to hold seats in, Republicans are gradually making headway, whether it's congressional seats, mayorships, at every level of government, Republicans are pressing ahead. And it isn't just this issue. When you throw in, and they may not sound connected, but they are connected, the transgender type issues, the portion of the Hispanic community that has viewed itself as Democrat, I believe, has now seen a Democrat Party that they say, whoa, this is crazy. They've literally gone too far, and they are, and just the normalcy of an ordinary Republican position, when you combine it with an immigration position and people like rule of law, play by the rules approach, they don't want to see a system where people can jump the line. That is just not playing out, despite radical liberal Democrats' desire for that to be popular. It is not. It is not. And so I think you're going to see in Hispanic states, and by that I mean with a significant Hispanic population, because the Hispanic vote is swinging GOP, those states are going to be moving into the GOP column if there are good candidates running. That is a precondition to have good candidates running, but it's going to make a big difference. And it isn't just one issue, it's the way this issue signals insanity to so many in the electorate who are culturally conservative but have voted Democratic in the past. We saw this when Ronald Reagan arose, right? Over 40 years ago. Cultural conservative union members, for instance, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, who came over from the Democrat Party to vote for, in Texas, to vote for Ronald Reagan, North Carolina. This does happen every so often. And if the Republican Party would get its crap together and set its feet firmly as the party of working families and ordinary people, they would dominate this country's politics for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
But, the Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy's of the world are more beholden to donors rather than ordinary people. I think they all need to wake up and do what I do first thing every morning now and listen to rich men north of Richmond That's how I start my day every day. And if you wake up fighting those people, doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're going to make America a better place.
Yeah, I've heard that song so much lately. Sometimes I find myself singing it by accident, just like humming it along at home. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for your assessment today.